Most people don't lose their emergency gear to thieves, they lose it to their neighbors, with a smile on their face, and they never see it again. That's the real story of what happens to your supplies when the power goes out. Not some dramatic breakdown of society. Not neighbors going dark and turning desperate, just ordinary, tired, stressed out people borrowing something useful, taking it home, setting it on a counter, and quietly forgetting it ever belonged to you. The usual conversation around this topic goes straight to barter economies and survival currency, as if a missing flashlight is the thing standing between you and disaster. It isn't. The actual mechanism is far more human and far less dramatic than that. Your stuff walks out the door because your neighbor is running on 2 hours of sleep, their toddler won't stop crying, and they've got water coming in somewhere it shouldn't be. Your headlamp is now in a kitchen drawer under a pile of takeout menus, and nobody meant for any of it to happen. So this isn't a video about hoarding supplies or watching your neighbor freeze rather than toss them a blanket. This is about knowing in advance which everyday household items tend to disappear during an outage and building a simple, low-cost system that lets you help people freely without leaving your own household vulnerable. That's a very different mindset than most of this content takes, and it's the one that actually works. 11 items today. For each one, you'll understand why it vanishes and what you can do about it before the next outage hits. Most of these are things already sitting somewhere in your home right now. A few of them will catch you off guard, and the last one on the list trips up nearly everyone, including people who consider themselves well prepared. Let's start with light, because that's where almost every blackout experience begins. But skip past the obvious flashlight conversation for a moment, because flashlights aren't the core problem. The real problem is the headlamp. A headlamp is the single most practical piece of lighting gear you own during a power outage, and it's also the first thing that leaves your house. Here's exactly why that happens. The moment the lights cut out, you're going to spend the next hour doing a dozen small but important tasks. Locating the breaker panel, pulling blankets from the top shelf of a closet, walking down basement stairs to check on a sump pump, reading a thermometer in a back room, making food for kids who aren't handling the situation well. None of that goes smoothly with one hand occupied by a flashlight. A headlamp frees both hands instantly, which is why it's the right tool for all of it. Now picture your neighbor. They didn't buy one. Maybe they have a flashlight somewhere, maybe not. What they definitely have is a scared kid, a sink full of dishes they can't wash without hot water, and a basement situation developing. They come to your door and ask if you have anything that can help. You hand them your headlamp, because a headlamp is genuinely the correct answer to their problem, and that is the last time that headlamp is in your possession for the next several months. Not because they're a bad person. Because when the power came back on, they set it on the counter. Something got stacked on top of it. It migrated into a junk drawer. It'll stay there until the next outage, at which point they'll find it, remember it's yours, feel a little awkward about it, and say nothing. Now it's theirs by default. The fix is dead simple. Own at least 2, and 3 is better. A quality rechargeable headlamp runs about $20. Brands like Black Diamond, Petzl, and Phoenix all make models that hold up for years of regular use. Keep one in your kitchen, one in your emergency kit or vehicle, and a spare in a clearly labeled box with your other outage supplies. When someone asks, you hand them the spare, not your everyday use model. That's the whole system. One more thing worth doing, write your name on it with a paint pen. Sounds like something from 3rd grade. Works better than you'd think. When a neighbor spots a name on the strap 3 weeks later, there's suddenly a very natural moment to return it. Small detail, real difference. What question does almost every person in a multi-day outage end up asking themselves around day 2? How am I going to open all these cans? Second item, and this is one that almost never makes these lists: the manual can opener. You probably own one. It's probably wedged in the back of a drawer behind a spatula you never use, and if someone asked you to produce it in under 2 minutes, you might not be able to. Most households have quietly shifted to electric openers or rely on pull-tab packaging. The result is that when the power is out and someone's pull-tab snaps off mid-hunger crisis, they suddenly realize they don't actually own a manual opener, and they come looking for yours. You hand it over, because it's a can opener, and of course you do. They take it home, open 3 or 4 cans, leave it sitting on their counter, and it becomes part of their kitchen. Your can opener is gone. Here's why that matters more than it sounds. During any extended outage, your food is almost entirely coming from cans. Soup, beans, tuna, canned fruit, anything with a long shelf life lives without a reliable opener. You're improvising with knives and the edges of concrete steps, and that's both a real injury risk and a reliable way to waste food. One missing can opener can turn 3 days of comfortable eating into a frustrating mess. The fix costs $6. Buy 3 manual can openers. The OXO model is solid and comfortable to use. The swing away has been around for decades, costs almost nothing, and gets the job done every time. Keep one in your kitchen, one with your emergency supplies, and one in a labeled bag in the garage. When someone needs to borrow an opener, hand them the 3rd one and mentally file it as a gift, not a loan. Everyone's life stays easier that way. 3rd item, and possibly the most frequently lost of all, lighters. Specifically, the good ones. Lighters vanish during outages not because of bad intent, but because they're small, everyone needs one, and they're incredibly easy to pocket without thinking. A standard lighter feels almost disposable, so nobody feels terrible about borrowing one. But when you're relying on a flame to light candles, ignite a camp stove, start a kerosene heater, or get a gas burner going, and you're down to one lighter with an uncertain amount of fuel, that small item becomes genuinely important. Keep a small pouch with 6 to 8 basic lighters in your emergency supplies. Not for trading, not for survival currency. Simply because if you lose track of 2 or 3 in a week of chaos, you still have a handful left. These are cheap insurance against a surprisingly frustrating problem. Here's something worth understanding about storm matches, which appear on most preparedness lists. They're excellent for a specific scenario, lighting something outside in wind or rain. They burn long and bright. But for daily indoor use during a power outage, a standard lighter is more practical, safer in an enclosed space, and doesn't burn through your supply every time you need a flame for 30 seconds. Keep both. Use each one for what it's actually good at. When a neighbor asks for a lighter, hand them one and tell them to keep it. Transaction complete. No one has to remember to bring anything back. You've helped, you've kept the exchange clean, and you've still got 7 more where that came from. Could your phone die before day 2 of an outage even ends? For a lot of people, the answer is yes, and that's where the next item becomes critical. 4th, the portable power bank, specifically the large one. If you own a 20,000 milliamp hour power bank or anything in the range of a larger portable power station, you already know how much it changes a blackout experience. A unit that size can fully recharge a modern smartphone 6 or 7 times over. For a household with 2 adults who both need working phones, for communication, for updates, for weather, that's 3 to 4 days of coverage, assuming reasonable use. Here's what happens at the neighbor's house. Power goes out mid-afternoon. By early evening, their phones are both below 20%. By 9 o'clock 1, is dead. By 10 o'clock, they're knocking on your door asking if they can plug in for a few minutes. You say yes, because of course you do. They plug in. 1 hour becomes 3. The device they're borrowing is now their de facto charging station for the remainder of the outage. Your power bank is doing its job, just for someone else's household. The fix isn't refusing to help. It's owning a second, smaller unit specifically for situations like this. A 10,000 milliamp hour bank runs about $25 to $30 and can fully charge a phone 3 times. That's your neighbor unit. Hand it over. Let them keep it charged for the week. Your primary station stays in your house, keeping your own devices running, and make sure your primary unit is topped off before a storm, not after. Most people think to charge their power bank when the outage starts. By then it may already be at 40% from the last time they used it and forgot to recharge it. Plug it in when a storm is in the forecast. Full charge before the outage begins is the only charge that counts. Fifth item. The water filter. This one surprises people until they think it through. Municipal water pressure often drops during extended power outages, particularly in areas served by electrically pumped systems. In some situations, official advisories recommend boiling tap water before drinking. People in those situations suddenly realize that their plan of just turning on the faucet isn't working, and they come looking for alternatives. If you own a gravity-fed water filter like the ones made by Berkey or Sawyer, that filter becomes one of the most wanted items on your block the moment water pressure becomes uncertain. Someone will ask to borrow it. You'll want to say yes because the alternative feels awful. But a quality gravity filter runs well over $100, and the filter elements can be damaged if they're mishandled, dropped, or improperly backwashed. The solution here is a tiered approach. Own your primary filter and protect it. Also keep a supply of water purification tablets, the kind made with sodium hypochlorite or sodium dichloroisocyanurate, which run about $10 for a pack that treats 100 gallons. When a neighbor needs water treatment, hand them the tablets. Clear instructions, easy to use. Your filter stays in your possession, doing its job for your household. If you want a second option, Sawyer makes a personal squeeze filter for around $30 that's simple, durable, and easy to hand to someone who needs it. A neighbor can use it correctly without a tutorial and bring it back when the outage is over. Much lower stakes than lending out a large gravity system. Sixth item. The extension cord, specifically the heavy-duty outdoor rated one. When a generator appears in a neighborhood during an outage, an extension cord becomes one of the most competed over items on the block. One generator can power a refrigerator, a fan, and a phone charger simultaneously, but only if you can get power from the generator to wherever those things are. The cord is the bridge. If you own a good 50-foot, 14-gauge outdoor extension cord, you have something very useful. You also have something that has a real tendency to get borrowed, used, left plugged into something, and forgotten about. Extension cords don't feel valuable until suddenly they're the only way to keep a refrigerator running, and then they're irreplaceable. Own two, a primary heavy-duty cord that stays in your possession, and a secondary cord you're willing to part with. The secondary doesn't need to be as long or as heavy. A 25-foot cord rated for outdoor use does the job for most neighbor situations and costs about $15. Hand over the second cord and keep your primary one doing its job in your setup. One important safety note. Never run an extension cord under a rug or through a doorway where it can be pinched. Never daisy chain multiple cords together to reach a generator. That's a fire risk. And never use an indoor rated cord with a generator or anything drawing significant wattage. The gauge rating on the cord matters. Get that wrong, and you risk overheating and fire in a situation where the fire department may already be stretched thin. What happens to sleep when the temperature climbs and there's no air conditioning? People get desperate in ways they didn't anticipate. Seventh, the battery-powered fan. This one tends to disappear in summer outages specifically, and it matters more than it seems. Heat is a legitimate danger during power outages, particularly for elderly people, young children, and anyone with a cardiovascular condition. When temperatures climb and the air conditioning goes off, a battery fan can make the difference between a difficult night and a dangerous one. A decent rechargeable fan with a solid battery life runs about $25 to $40. Brands like Triva, Calm Life, and Oda Cool all make models that have held up well in extended testing. The problem is that fans are bulky enough that you remember you lent one, but light enough that the person borrowing it doesn't feel urgency about returning it. It sits in their bedroom. It becomes part of their heat management system for the outage. You ask for it back after 2 days, and suddenly the conversation gets awkward because their grandmother is sleeping in that room and the fan is the only thing keeping her comfortable. Own 2 fans. Keep one for your household. Keep one as your lending unit. It's a $25 solution to an uncomfortable social situation. Eighth, the battery-powered or hand-crank emergency radio. This one disappears in a different way than the others. It doesn't get pocketed or forgotten. It gets requested by someone who genuinely needs information and doesn't have another way to get it. During an extended outage, local radio is often the most reliable source of updates about power restoration timelines, water advisories, road closures, and emergency shelter locations. A hand crank or battery radio fills that function when phones are dead and cell towers are overloaded. The issue is that a good emergency radio, one with AM, FM, NOAA weather bands, and a hand crank charging option, is a specific, somewhat specialized item that not everyone owns. When someone hears you have one, they'll ask to borrow it, and unlike a lighter or a can opener, they'll actually need it for the duration of the outage, not just for an hour. Own 2 emergency radios. A primary unit with all the features you want, Midland and Sangean both make excellent models, and a basic backup unit that you're comfortable lending out for a week. A simple hand crank model runs about $20 and works fine for basic news and weather updates. Hand that one to a neighbor who needs it. Keep your better radio tuned to what matters in your own household. Ninth, the cooler. And not just any cooler, the good one. Most people, when the power goes out, don't immediately think about the cooler. They think about it on day 2, when the refrigerator temperature is rising and the food they're most worried about, meat, medication, anything perishable, starts coming into question. A quality insulated cooler packed with ice from a nearby store buys 2 to 3 more days of reliable cold storage for the items that genuinely cannot be lost. Medications, insulin, anything with a narrow temperature requirement. Your neighbor doesn't own a good cooler anymore. They had one years ago. They lent it to someone for a camping trip. It didn't come back. Now they're watching a freezer full of food approach the danger zone, and they knock on your door because they know you have one. You can't say no to a freezer full of food going bad, so you hand it over. And once it's at their house full of their ribeyes, there's no natural moment to ask for it back without that conversation becoming uncomfortable. The solution is 2 coolers with different roles. A quality insulated cooler, something in the Yeti or Coleman Extreme family, stays in your possession doing serious cold storage work. An older, less precious cooler lives in your garage specifically for lending situations. When a neighbor needs one, they get the backup. Your primary cooler stays in your home doing exactly what you need it to do. 10th, the camp stove and, more importantly, the fuel that goes with it. Most people think they'll figure out food during a blackout. Cold sandwiches, peanut butter, crackers, that works for the first day. By day 2, hot food starts feeling less like a comfort and more like a genuine need. Hot coffee in the morning and soup in the evening are the small things that make a difficult situation feel manageable rather than miserable. A single-burner butane stove, the kind that folds into a compact case and costs around $25, will boil water in under 3 minutes and cook a full meal on a single fuel canister. Coleman and Gas One both make reliable models that are easy to use and simple to store. Each fuel canister costs $2 to $3 and provides about 90 minutes of cook time. The stove isn't the part that causes problems. The fuel is. The moment a neighbor sees you making hot food on day 2 of an outage, they'll want to borrow the stove. You'll lend it. They'll use it. They'll bring it back. That part is fine. But the canister is now half empty, they don't have spares, and neither do you because you bought 2 when you bought the stove and assumed that would be enough. By day 3, you're out of fuel. Hardware stores have lines out the door. Online shipping isn't moving. You're back to cold food in a situation that already feels long. The fix is to overbuy fuel significantly. For a $25 stove, stockpile 8 to 10 canisters. That's roughly $20 of insurance that covers 3 hot meals a day for a week with fuel to spare. When a neighbor borrows the stove, lend it with 1 canister. Keep the rest. When they return the stove, the exchange is complete and you're still well supplied. One critical safety point that cannot be overstated: butane stoves must not be run in sealed interior spaces. Open a window, use them near a working vent, or run them in a garage with the door open. Carbon monoxide poisoning is the leading cause of death related to power outages in the United States, and the overwhelming majority of those deaths come from people running grills, generators, and stoves in enclosed spaces with inadequate ventilation. This is not a small risk. Take it seriously every single time. And now, the 11th item, the one that surprises nearly everyone the first time they deal with an extended outage. What's the thing that connects you to every other household on the block but that almost nobody thinks to protect in advance? Jumper cables. During a prolonged blackout, dead car batteries become remarkably common. People leave dome lights on. They keep the car doors open while unloading supplies. They sit in the car with the engine off to listen to the radio or charge their phones. Any one of those habits repeated over 2 or 3 days of low-level battery drain will leave a car unable to start. And the moment that happens, the person who can't start their car walks up and down the street looking for jumper cables. If you own a set and they're visible, you're the person everyone calls. And here's the part nobody anticipates. In normal life, lending jumper cables is a 2-minute exchange. Jump the car, coil up the cables, take them home. During a blackout, the person whose battery died wants to keep your cables nearby in case they need a second jump. They put them in their trunk. They drive somewhere with them. They forget the cables were yours. Now your cables are in another car, in a different driveway, and tracking them down feels like more effort than just buying a new set. Own 2 sets, one in your car, one in the garage. A solid set of 8-gauge cables in a 20-foot length runs about $30. If a neighbor needs a jump, pull the garage set, do the jump together, and if they ask to hang on to them for the day, let them go without expectation of return. Your car set stays in your car where it belongs. Even better than a second set of cables, a portable lithium jump starter. These are the compact units, roughly the size of a thick wallet, that weigh about 2 pounds and can start a car engine without needing a second vehicle. They run $60 to $100. Brands like Noco Boost and Chlor have solid track records. The advantage is total independence. You can start your own car without anyone else's involvement, which matters a great deal on day 3 of an outage when half your block has dead batteries and nobody has a working vehicle to help with a traditional jump. Now let's pull all of this together, because the pattern matters as much as the individual items on the list. Everything covered here, from the headlamp to the jumper cables, shares 3 specific characteristics. First, each item is useful in ways people don't fully appreciate until they're in the middle of needing it. Second, each item is small or portable enough to migrate out of your house without much friction. Third, each item is inexpensive enough that the person who borrowed it doesn't feel intense pressure to return it, because replacing it theoretically isn't a big deal to them, even though they never actually do replace it or return it. The solution to all of that is not becoming someone who refuses to help neighbors. The solution is planning your generosity in advance. Here's what that looks like as a practical system. For every item on this list, you own 2 versions, a primary that stays in your possession and a backup that becomes your neighbor unit. When someone needs something, you hand them the backup freely. Their problem gets solved. Your household stays functional. The relationship stays warm. Nobody feels resentful or depleted. The total cost of building that backup layer across all 11 items, starting from scratch, buying everything over several months rather than all at once, is somewhere around $300. A second headlamp, a pair of spare can openers, a pack of lighters, a smaller power bank, a supply of water treatment tablets and a basic filter, a second extension cord, an extra battery fan, a backup emergency radio, a used cooler from a garage sale, a camp stove with a stockpile of fuel canisters, a second set of jumper cables. That's not a significant sum spread across 6 months. It's the cost of 2 meals out, or 1 impulse purchase you'd forget about a week later. The difference is that this investment pays off during the exact moments when everything else is going wrong and the people around you are counting on someone to be steady. Here's the deeper point worth sitting with. The worst outcome during a power outage isn't a borrowed headlamp that never came back. The worst outcome is feeling genuinely torn between helping the people around you and protecting your own family, and doing the wrong version of both. You help too much, deplete your own supplies, and end up quietly resentful. Or you refuse to help, feel guilty about it for weeks, and damage a relationship you'll need during a completely ordinary Tuesday 3 months from now. Duplicates solve both problems at once. You help freely because you can afford to. Your household stays operational because your primary gear never left. Your neighbors remember you as the person who came through when it mattered. And you're not the one lying awake at 2 in the morning wondering how you're going to open the next can of soup. Preparedness isn't fear. It's not distrust of the people around you. It's the thing that makes you useful to them when usefulness actually counts. A steady, well-supplied household is the foundation for being genuinely helpful rather than heroically depleted. The duplicates approach is how you get there without spending a lot of money or changing who you are as a neighbor. Go back through this list and pick the 2 or 3 items that feel most likely given your situation, your neighborhood, and the kinds of outages your area tends to see. Start there. Add to it over time. You don't need to do all of this in a single weekend. You need to do enough of it that the next time the lights go out, your first thought isn't panic, it's a quiet sense that you've already handled this. If this was useful, a like genuinely helps get this content in front of more people, and my channel is where more of this kind of practical thinking lives. Drop a comment if there's a specific topic you want covered next. That list gets read, and the best video ideas come directly from it. Stay steady, stay prepared, and stay useful to the people.